am so delighted to work with Educare across this country. And as you all know, the Educare Network partners with a diverse group of communities and early childhood champions across the country, forming our national network of 25 Educare schools that serve children from 6 weeks to 5 years of age. Our purpose is really to improve access to high quality early childhood care and education for every child across this country. We want to start early so that every child in America is ready for kindergarten. So welcome to our discussion today. Together, we will have a discussion about those things that are critically important right now in the early childhood space. Our children from 6 weeks to 5 years of age, social emotional development of our children, what happened to our children through the pandemic and what did we see as a response, and how we all are positioning ourselves in our local communities in the different roles that we play to support the early childhood field overall. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Tamika.
I actually was a parent of the Educare program, and for me, it was very important for my child. I believe that it prepared him for those early foundational skills that he would need for literacy. I also think that for me, it was a financial blessing because I didn't have hundreds of dollars to be able to spill out for childcare. And so it was helpful to be able to have him a part of Early Head Start Next Door. And in addition to that, as a mom, I was like wanting safety for my child, making sure that he's in a place where I trust these people. And I found that with Educare Next Door. And I also believe that they cared about the whole well-being of the child and the family. And so that's what I actually love about Educare. So I appreciate you all and thank you so much. And with that, I would like to ask Mike, why are the first 5 years so important?
Well, I guess I think of it sort of for two reasons, really. The first is that children are born learning, and all of those opportunities we have in those first 5 years to enrich a child's educational and intellectual development, to enrich their social and emotional development, that can have a really big impact on how the children do in school, in work, in life. And the second reason is because those first 5 years are a magical time to really support and help strengthen and enrich the parent-child relationship, because it's the parent-child relationship that's the real engine of change.
Well, I would just add to what Mike said. In fact, there's research that shows that a high-quality early childhood experience in the first 5 years of life have what we say in research, concurrent benefits, which means it benefits the child while they're enrolled in the program. But also there's longer-term research that shows that the good effects do carry through into adulthood.
Yeah, and I would say that from the Community Foundation perspective, that's exactly why we're investing in early childhood education. We have a commitment to supporting our community across the continuum. When we think about where we can get the largest returns on our investments downstream, it's in early childhood education. To your point, Tamika, not only for the child, but for the parent as well, right? We believe that those first 5 years, right, that's when the clock starts ticking, right? Between the time that the child has to show up ready for school, but also that the parent has the advocacy and efficacy, right? So that they can be or continue to be their child's first and most important teacher.
Yeah, no, I think the return on investment is critical. And, you know, we talk about the familial role in the home, but then society, I think there's a huge return on investment there, right? And we think about long term, we start off prenatally even before the child is even born. And then we calculate that out across the whole lifespan. It's our cradle through career, through death, I'd say return on investment. And it all starts prenatally through that age 5, which is so critical, right? And that's why we're all here, because we know that early childhood is important.
In fact, a Nobel-winning economist, James Heckman, has kind of quantified what you just said, and the returns on investment, the ROI, range anywhere from, for every dollar invested, you get a $7 return, up to, I've seen estimates as high as $20 to $25 for every dollar.
Yeah, that's a really, critical point because people want to know if we invest in early childhood, what's the outcome of that, right? So you just brought to light, there is a return on investment, long-term return on investment. Instinctively, we knew that the pandemic would have a significant impact on the social and emotional development of children. But I'd like to, bring it home a little bit. Maybe you, Tamika, can talk about it from the perspective of a parent. What was that like for you when our country shut down and you have, small children at home as well? And then we'll go to everyone else and just share, what was the impact of the pandemic in your particular situation?
Absolutely. So I had to get up and go to work virtually, right? And he's supposed to go to school virtually. I think at this time he had to be about 1 or something like that, 18 months. So it was tough because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on work and he's running around, doing his thing. And, what it really kind of invoked in me was that as a parent, we are our children's first teacher. And so I really had to hone that in and bring it back okay, you need to do whatever you have to do. I know you have to work, but you need to do whatever you have to do to make sure that he's getting what he needs, because I was afraid that he was missing out on that social time with other children, that he was missing out on really learning what he needed to learn at that critical age. And so it was a challenge, but I got through it, especially trying to maneuver through not really knowing the virtual system and learning it and having to teach other parents' children. So it was a challenge.
This time that their children are separated from other kiddos, from their teachers who they love, from their school communities, they were really getting concerned that they weren't going to see enough social emotional growth, which for us is a key indicator of children's readiness for school. What we saw in Flint is that instead of children losing gains in social emotional growth, our kids grew over the pandemic. And I think that that's such an important message for people to understand about this Educare system, because it's not just what's going on in the classrooms, which supports that growth, but it's also our understanding of where they are socially emotionally, right? So I would say that our research component in Flint became crucial during the pandemic, that we kept a steady hand on the wheel related to research to truly understand the conditions that our children were facing and our families.
In Educare, the model depends so much on research and the constant collection of information about the children, the families, the staff, and how that really does inform the program. And we really worked hard in Tulsa to keep the data collection going during the pandemic. And we found exactly what you said, that the children's social emotional growth was not hampered in the Educare program, because I think the teachers and the staff and the families were so in tune with the need to support children through this very strange experience that we all lived through, that the children didn't suffer in that way. The social emotional development continued to be strong.
It took heroic efforts to respond to this pandemic, and what we saw across the Educare network. It was just absolutely heroic efforts. And I think that's the question that all of us sort of need to wrestle with in America. And it's, do we really, the early childhood workforce is the workforce that supports the American workforce, And do we really expect them to do heroic level work every day with our youngest children? I mean, that gets to why the systems are just so unfair, and those opportunities I talked about at the top, those are just unfairly distributed,
Kind of along the same lines, because when you mentioned the pandemic, for me, the silver lining actually was spotlighting the importance of how critical early childhood is, right? And behind a critical, important early childhood experience, how critical a quality early childhood professional is. We had parents stepping into roles that they didn't wish to step into oftentimes. We had the media all over that. It's not babysitting any longer, it's education. We're doing much more. We're learning through play. And I think that's what happened. If anything, there was a silver lining that came out of the pandemic too, kind of pulling out that optimism.
Yeah, and I would just say on the policy side, right, we're seeing that exact same thing, that early childhood is now shifting to become a workforce and economic development imperative, which is making it easier to make a case to individuals who may not have seen early childhood education as central to what it is that they see as important. But if you care about cities, if you care about the workforce, if you care about businesses, if you care about the economy, then you have to care about early childhood education. When I go into the classrooms at Educare, every single child is having an individual lesson. And those teachers are allowing the children to lead that learning, and they have this extremely nuanced skill set of being able to make a learning connection out of anything. Yeah. And I would say when we talk about the return on investment and what it costs, people say early childhood education is so expensive, but it requires such a specialized skill set that I think that this pandemic has also allowed for us to start pushing more aggressively outside of our own circles to professionalize the field. And just to your point, I think that that has been a huge outcome of the pandemic, that we as early childhood advocates and people who care about kids and families have to stay on post-pandemic.
Well, that is our drive, right? I mean, Ed, I think what some don't understand about Educare is that it is more than high quality early childhood care and education in a classroom setting. You know, our premise is built on using research, using data to ensure that we are amplifying the voice of what we're learning across this network so that we can change our policies and change these systems so that more children in America have an advantage of a high quality early childhood.
There has to be a certain level of investment, right? As educators, we have to be vested in our children's learning. And in addition to that, we need community and other supporters to also invest in our children's education and in our future. So I think this was a great discussion, and with all this talk around what's been happening and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead of us, I kind of want to swing towards Sandy and ask you, what do you see as early childhood education's biggest issue?
In terms of challenges, I think we've been through a lot, but definitely I think want to focus on the recruitment and the retention of our early childhood professionals. And I'm using the word professionals because I think that's one of the things that's missing nationally, right? A recognition of early childhood, not just as a field, as a workforce, but as a profession. Mm-hmm. It's lacking respect. We know that after the pandemic, it requires a lot. It's education. To be an early childhood professional, you have to go through formal studies. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it is just seen as a babysitting job. And it's not. There's so much more. There's studies of development that start from prenatal through 5, kindergarten, pre-kindergarten. So I'd say really it's the shortage across the nation for the professional field of early childhood. And it's not just recruiting folks in, it's how do we retain them and ensure that they don't leave us. Educare is not that. They go above and beyond. They're setting the bar high. They're a national model. They're a network that just sets precedent for what we should be doing, and not just through pay, but also the way that they're taking care of their professionals on the field, in the classroom, as teachers, as family engagement specialists, as disabilities coordinators, as administrators. Really, the support wraparound isn't just for the child in the classroom, for the family, but for the professional that goes day after day to take care of everybody. And so I'd say we really need to keep a handle on that to ensure that we can continue to offer quality early childhood experiences to children and families. We need those professionals to also be taken care of.
Building on the statistics that Cynthia quoted just a minute ago, that only 11% of eligible children get early Head Start, and 30-some% of the preschoolers who are eligible for Head Start get that. And we know through research that these programs can have such a powerful impact on children for their short and long-term development. I always think about just the wasted human potential that is out there because we don't fund these programs at the level that can serve more children and families.
The early childhood field, if you think of it as an industry in America, it's an industry that's underfunded, it's siloed, and it's very fragmented. There's not really a system that holds it all together. So part of the magic of Educare is braiding and blending all these various funding streams, then adding some private dollars to it so you can get to the level of quality that we know what it takes to change the life trajectory of a child and a family. What that level of quality means are people. And people mean salary and compensation. Your point, I think, if you think about the biggest challenges we face right now, as we head deeper into the 21st century, the early childhood workforce, starting with compensation, is probably one of two. The second would be, mental health support. You think about mental well-being, especially coming out of the pandemic, and just the toxicity of the stress and the burnout that the people who are doing the work too often feel, the parents feel, the kids themselves feel,
I would agree, and I like the idea of that quality piece that you stated. Just coming from a parent's perspective, thinking about putting your child into a program that you feel like you don't know these people and you want to make sure that your child is safe and that they're getting what they need, because it can't be from you right now because maybe you have to go back to work or other obligations and such. I think that Educare really does a great job in easing some of those fears when it comes to a parent having to, because sometimes a parent has to, but I think to your point, when you indicated that the percentage of some children who are not in programming, it may be kind of attributed to some of those fears of parents putting their children in places or spaces where they're unsure. And so I can appreciate that through Educare, that is something that you all really, really do a good job of, like really easing that fear for a parent.
That's a great point. And this is, this is all relationship-based work, right? Like we build relationships on every level. The first level is between parents and the staff that work at the Educare schools, but also ensure that the parent-child has a great relationship also. And then we build relationships with our network of schools across the country, our philanthropists, our champions, our funders, you name it, it's relationship-based. So, if we're not creating these really strong relationships, it doesn't play out well to parents, as you said, and you expressed that you felt that, when you were a parent with a child in an Educare school.
Just as one who served as a parent leader at Educare Next Door, I would encourage more parents to get involved in that way. Serve on the policy council within your Educare school and be that voice, because you all want to hear from the parents.
Absolutely. We want you all to lead us.
Right. You all want to know what we believe our children need. And we are the ones who would know that the best. I think that from serving on that team, it really gave me more of a keen thought to really be involved and know what's happening in the school, know what the school is doing, what their responsibility is, and then also what mine is, and how the two can mesh. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be my advice.
Great. What other things can communities do to be involved in early childhood? And I would say specifically support Educare schools in the various communities that you all are in.
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier, the public-private partnership. Educare doesn't happen if a couple of people don't step up in a community. Mm-hmm. And that means the early childhood providers, it means the school leaders, mm-hmm. and it also means the private sector, and those philanthropists, their investments are so important. And a philanthropist can invest in a couple of different ways. You can invest, directly in early childhood practice and see a big difference there. You can invest in supporting early childhood science and support some of the research that is absolutely essential to the continuous improvement that every Educare needs to continue to be a leader in this field. And you can also invest in Educare to be an agent of policy change. And if you're looking, one of the questions that gets talked about in philanthropy all the time is scale. How do we get to scale? Mm-hmm. If I make an investment in Educare, how do I do more than just change the lives of the 200 kids who cross our threshold, part of me wants to say, well, that's a pretty good investment.
Right.
You know? But I get the question. We're all interested in getting to the millions of kids who are not served by Head Start and Early Head Start. And that's by investing in a platform of change that will host legislators and gubernatorial candidates and senators to come on through, as Educare Milwaukee has, as Educare Flint and Educare Tulsa all have. Coming together, it takes a village. It's partnerships. It's relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more that, no single person or organization alone can solve our society's most deeply embedded and nuanced challenges. And so I think what's really important for communities to understand is that if you have an Educare school in your community, or even if you're a partner with the Educare Learning Network, that it's not the Educare Learning Network alone, right, who's responsible for this. We can't do it. And so we have to commit to unprecedented levels of partnership, right, with families, right, with philanthropy, with community members. And so I agree on what can you do, right, invest. And Mike outlined a number of ways that we can invest treasure, right? But I also encourage people to invest time, right? I mean, reach out to your Educare school, right? Find out if there are opportunities to volunteer, if there are opportunities to connect with parents. Talent, right? We talked about the talent gap in the early childhood workforce. We need professionals who are committed to our youngest children and their families. And so if you feel that maybe there's not a financial investment for me, but I can make an investment of time, testimony, right? And so coming through a program like that and sharing your story and helping other people to understand, right, the value of early childhood education, I think all of those are ways that communities can truly get involved, in addition to engaging directly and helping to support through finance.
Yeah. Educare just does a really good job of acknowledging their surroundings and knowing that they're not the only ones serving the family, but that really there's a whole host of partners that they should partner with also, and bringing them in is part of what they're great at, right? We talked about relationships, and that's what they do, and that's not just in one city, but it's in various states across the nation, which I think even to replicate that model is in and of itself just admirable, and I think that that's just really powerful to see.
Yeah, I think, Sandy, one of the partnerships that has been part of the network strategy overall has been partnering with universities, with our local evaluation partners, but also from a workforce development standpoint. And we need to do more of that, both at the community college level and at the university level, because what we're seeing is the dying off of that, even at the college and the university level. There aren't as many early childhood training programs anymore at the secondary level. So that's another one that we need to, try to build those partnerships and relationships as well, because, as we are taking this language and narrative about our early childhood professionals forward, they're going to need somewhere to go, right? At the university level or the collegiate level also. So just thinking about this from an equity standpoint, and we know that there's, diversity across the network of schools overall. We're in 15 different states, DC, and we just have to ensure that we all have an understanding, as you mentioned, Sandy, about the diversity that isn't existing in all these communities. And, we're building a equitable system, and everybody don't get the same thing, right? Because all children, all families, all communities, all states are different. And so recognition of that, I think, is really critical as we move forward our system for early childhood overall. I don't know, any last thoughts or final words that folks want to wrap up with here today?
Well, I think I would probably just say if anybody is interested, anybody out there is interested, let's talk. Any one of us would be happy to talk more. I know you've got folks there locally who are going to have a conversation. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to do together. So
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I hope it resonated on camera, but, we definitely are passionate about the power of early childhood from in the classroom to the profession, and I really hope that came across, and I think I want to share that it's just not those of us in the room today, but there's a whole host more across the nation who really believe in the mission behind early childhood.
And I would just add as my parting comment that, we're passionate and we believe in early childhood, but we have a deep research base that really proves that our work makes a difference. And children are growing up in environments, and as a country, we can choose for those environments to be enriched and supportive of development, or we can choose for them not to be that, and we'll get two very different outcomes. So it's good not only for the individual children and families and communities, but investing in early childhood is really a strategy for our country to prosper and continue to grow.
I think for me, I would just want to lift up the advocacy aspect of all of this. I think that, a lot of donors are right, that it's not fair that only the kids who go to the 25 Educare schools are able to experience what we know is happening at Educare schools. And so we have to make the commitment to ensuring that this work won't stop until every single child in our country has access to the highest quality early childhood education that works for their family. Right. And so I just think that that's important for everyone from the outside looking at the Educare Learning Network to understand that every Educare school has an Educare Beyond the Wall strategy. And it's very important for those who are trying to commit to the early childhood sector that it's not just about increasing the number of Head Start slots. It's about increasing the quality of those slots and then increasing the number of those slots. And so just really wanted to lift those two things up on the advocacy side.
Well, I guess for me, I would just like to say early childhood education is an all hands on deck type of thing, and that I would encourage parents to get involved. And I would say that just invest in our future.
Great. Thank you so much, Tamika, as my co-host, Janelle, Diane, Sandy, and Mike for just engaging in this discussion today. And hopefully we can continue this discussion, maybe with some different panelists also. But everything that you guys contributed to this conversation today is so important to the movement of our field moving forward. So I really just want to thank you guys for that, and be well.
Thank you.
Onward.
And you want different panelists because this one.